Hello, Suzy, and welcome to this call. Very official and all. We're going to actually just record our chat today. And I just wanted to chat about intimacy coaching, your training, what brought you to it, all those sorts of things. I've got a list of questions right here. I'm going to ask you one at a time, putting you on the spot a little bit, but just it's an informal chat just to give people an idea at home about what intimacy coaching is. Because I don't know about you, but when you tell people you're an intimacy coach, what's the response?
Yes, I mean, a majority of the time, it's like, oh, is that sex coaching?
Yeah.
That's what people believe it to be, as in our current world. So yeah, it's very interesting chats that come up surrounding this subject, of course.
I find it so fascinating because people, when you say you're an intimacy coach, it depends what company I'm in. Sometimes I talk about more about relationship coaching because it
Yes.
depends what circles I'm in. I don't want to make people feel uncomfortable. But normally, if they find out that you're a relationship coach, whether you call yourself an intimacy coach or a sex and relationship coach or even a sex coach, where some people do decide to focus more on the sort of sexual side of things because that's where people's issues are as well. That most people are fascinated. They want
Yes.
to ask you questions. They want to take you to one side. Like the times I've done public talks and that as well. People afterwards, I say, does anyone have any questions? Does anyone want to ask anything? Audience is mum.
Yeah.
They'll applaud. They'll do a breathing exercise if I teach them a breathing exercise. Because sometimes I want to show people the difference between sensuality and sexuality, because in our world everybody just clumps it together, and
Yeah.
they're two quite different things. Although sexuality can have a lot of sensuality in it, we just put everything in the box marked sex, and that must be separate and different. So after the talk, people come up to me and they're like, oh, can you teach my husband how to touch me? Can you teach me about the 2-hour orgasm, blah blah blah? But only if they can't be heard by anyone else and they feel like totally private. But then they've got 15 million questions.
Yeah, it's that thing. There's so much, taboo still surrounding it, especially in our, in the Western culture. And I think that's the most fascinating thing. It's such a thing that we all have, but also still the conversations are getting there one year at a time of how we can all be so open to speaking more about our own sexuality within a group environment, or globally, whatever. But yeah, it's those kind of, I've got to speak about this privately. Understandably, it's a very
Mm.
personal thing. So it's lovely when, again, people can find that trust in someone to speak about something they may never have shared with anyone. So
Yeah, yeah.
really relatable to so many, especially as I think as we're all kind of opening our minds up to this, even the spiritual world, or the different areas of really going inward and finding out who we are related to our sexuality or sensuality. So no, it's fascinating.
Well, that's exactly it, though. Everything else in the world, we go to an expert or we go to a professional, and we're even willing to go and do maybe some couples counseling or some marriage counseling. But that's normally when there's a crisis already.
Yeah.
So often the people who come to us are already in crisis.
Yeah.
And that's a human thing. Very few people work on self-growth or what's possible within relationship, etc., when the relationship's doing well. Most
Yes.
people only actually get some help and learn what's possible when the relationship is in crisis. I read this fascinating thing yesterday talking about the fact that most marriages are over before they run into trouble because they flatline.
Yeah.
So the marriage gets too comfortable, the spark is gone, there's no deep pleasure in there anymore, because people go into relationships for a whole bunch of different reasons, and often it's not actually to create a relationship between two individuals. It's to fill a need, to be married before the age of, to have children, there's so many reasons that people get into relationship. And nobody designs their relationship. Everybody falls into relationship. And once those chemicals are flowing, if you've ever watched, I mean, I love watching Dr. Phil. And
Yes. Yeah.
every single time, once they're in that relationship, it sort of doesn't matter what the partner does. They tend to stay stuck in that pattern of, this is my relationship. I'm feeling the chemicals and the emotions. I'll forgive the person. I'll work through it, which is a wonderful thing. But sometimes it's better for people to not be in those relationships to start off with. But they don't design them. They just fall into them, or they
Yeah.
fall pregnant. You know,
Yeah.
so people get into relationships for a whole bunch of different reasons. I'm going off on many tangents here now. I have this whole list of questions I was going to specifically ask you, but it's just more fun to just chat. I'm going to ask you some of the questions I had on the list anyway, because so official question number one: what's been your biggest surprise about your own personal journey so far?
Well, I was thinking about
it's a big question.
there's so much, of course, but the one thing that firstly that came up for me with this question is the fact that when I remember when we first spoke, and I was on I've been on this self-love path, or the healing path from, past trauma, whether that be psychologically through relationships, but also through my own kind of coaching journey as well as a coach. And I've always been kind of, let's look within first, and again, my brain naturally goes there. However, when we first spoke, I was like, right, I think I'm wanting to do this in a certain period of time, and I want to be an intimacy coach by this time next year. And I remember having that conversation with you, going, I didn't say how quickly can I do this, but what's the possibilities? How can I? And I was trying to design it around my life at that time. So the biggest thing, even in this past year, has been to infiltrate it slowly. And this relates to our own life as well. It's so beautifully of how we can go, right, I want to be doing this, and I must be learning this by this time. But to just allow things to happen naturally, and how they infiltrate themselves into the lives, the different teachings, and how they come up at the right time for the reasons they need to come into your life. That for me is an ongoing lesson, and something I keep coming back to, that it's so beautifully infiltrating into my life at the right time, and to trust in that, which then again has upped my own trust in myself to allow the things to come into my life. And whether people believe things come into your life for a reason, or it's fate, or whatever anyone else believes, there is some such beauty in just not lowering the expectations to what you should have, or what I should be thinking at the time. So this has been the beautiful lesson that I've already really gone, right, I have my mindset has changed during this, purely because of that as well. So that's number one, but there's about 100 other things that have just been
Yeah, it's telling me now my internet connection is unstable, so this is going to be a very interesting recording. But you know what the thing is, I really wanted to start talking to the coaches who are doing the training, and to people. It's very hard for people who are just doing an intimacy coaching journey and they're not becoming coaches to talk about this stuff. Although I have gotten a few testimonials from people, and that took me by surprise, because in the business world, they were looking at me to run a couples retreat, and they needed referrals and testimonials and things, because obviously this isn't an academic exercise. This is an exercise of journeying with people and experiencing with people, and creating a safe space for them to do that, and to find themselves and their sensuality and sexuality and all of the other things that are involved with doing this sort of work. And it was so fascinating to me that some of the people gave me beautiful testimonials, but you can't get them on camera necessarily. Although many years ago, some of my clients were so happy about the work that they were doing, and so engrossed, and had such big changes in the work that they were doing, they were willing to be models for me with some of the work that I was filming and putting online, etc., which is a huge gift, because the line between appropriate content for people, and it's still, we are dealing with sexuality, so I have to be cognizant and aware of age restrictions, and also cultural beliefs in each country and all that sort of thing. We've got coaches around the world who are training, and sometimes their journeys look very different, and that's what I'm hoping to do with this series, is show that a coach training in the UK looks very different from a coach training in SA. And when I started Intimacy Coach International, it was actually was my inner voice that told me to do it. And I kept running away from this work because I was just thinking, I don't want to do the weird sex stuff anymore. I'm a singer, I'm an entertainer, I can do that, that's what I enjoy. But there was this pull all the time because of the discoveries I'd made, and the journey I'd gone on had been so unpleasant and so deep into the shadow work, which I do believe is important, and we do need to do that too. But I wanted to just create a different way for people to do this work moving forward so that it could become normalized. That people could say, oh, you know what, I'm not having as much pleasure as I'd like to have. In the beginning, it was so thrilling and exciting. I don't know why I've lost my libido. They'd be able to discuss all of that stuff, as well as the stuff that it's really about. Because everybody comes in thinking it's about sex and about sexual intimacy. And then they go on this journey and they go, oh, it's not really about that, is it? It's about integrating the aspects of your life. So it's just so fascinating hearing other people's stories of how they came to this. And also, you were a coach already. You were coaching. So you have that sort of self-discipline to want to grow, etc. And I wanted to talk to you as well about your experiences, because I also had experiences when I first started on this journey into neo-tantra and the sort of tantric work and circles. And, what's the pros and the cons of working with that sort of work, which is, most people, if they look up spiritual sexuality, they're going to find neo-tantra or tantra. Classical tantra is actually quite separate from neo-tantra, according to all the tantrikas. There's a lot of arguments in those circles, which is why I called myself an intimacy coach. Because when I called myself an intimacy coach, by the way, there were so few people online doing it that if I hashtagged intimacy coach or whatever, I would get the traffic immediately. Now there's lots. So
isn't it? And it's
not going to rethink.
And especially because of, again, like as we know, like the theatre world, that word intimacy, luckily, has been brought in a different, slightly, obviously, well, it's all similar, but a slightly different aspect of the intimacy direction, or all of those things, which is wonderful because the word is being normalized, I think, as well. So, but you're right, it comes back to that the stigma, still the taboo, the stigma surrounding sex and what that involves, and how our confidence wavers, which is really interesting as well, like how that wavers to do with the word sex and what that means to us and how we feel about ourselves. And I do believe that the self-love, healing journey, whatever people want to call it, is so deeply personal because of our past, or as you said, the different biases, assumptions we've grown up with, the religious backgrounds, that there is a very fine line in how we bring it across. But there's so many different layers to it that all come back down to, again, trusting ourselves and our own levels of confidence, self-esteem, and that, like you said, that deeper work, that shadow work, which is so important, and there is a place for it. However, what is beautiful about this journey, which I've been on even with you so far, is that the basics of understanding ourselves with our sexuality and our creativity, which is one and the same thing, is how that really does open you up. And whether that be with a partner or with yourself, and the ideas of allowing that kind of self-love journey to take its journey by itself. And it's almost, I feel like it's almost leading me rather than the other way around sometimes, which it's lessened that control over what I thought I should be, if that makes sense.
It does. I want to go back to what you said before about, so many times I like to speak to people before they do the course, although the marketing professionals and the business people say, don't do that. Tell them buy now, and this is the discount, and this is it doesn't feel comfortable for me to do it that way. I want people to come into the energetic circle of what we're doing with their own approach to the work, even though they're going to learn all the tool sets and the rest of it, but they're going to have their own individual journey, because my journey doesn't look like your journey. Whereas when you're just selling a product, it's like everybody must fit into this space. But going back to the individual approach to things and your own personal journey, it's like I've forgotten where I was going with that. But anyway, it's just I'm having so many thoughts at the moment about what I want to express and talk about that I'm just like inundated.
Well, I think
It's just like it is putting people into this one whole marked sex. That sounds terrible.
I know what you mean.
But you know what I mean. It's like most of us can figure out. Most of us can figure out how to have a little bit of sexual pleasure, and we like look, for example, I read about this story in Cosmopolitan when I was like, Tim and I, that's my husband, we read an article in Cosmo about finding the G-spot. So we sat with a torch and we looked for it. It didn't really work because he found the G-spot, like where they said in the article to find it, but it just made me feel like I wanted to wee, and we just gave up because I just thought, oh well, I don't have one, not everyone has one, blah blah blah. I didn't know anything about how the body works and about blood flow, and by blood flow I mean to the muscles, not necessarily looking for the G-spot and creating blood flow. No, definitely not. But it's like this whole approach to sexuality in the body doesn't seem to integrate the way it could do with other disciplines.
Yeah.
Like with health and wellness, so the moment we're looking at sexual health, it's all like it's in its own category. And that's the thing about intimacy coaching, the way we're choosing to do it is it's holistic intimacy coaching, and the fact that it's looking at someone's belief systems and individuality. For example, there's some people doing courses who are very, very Christian at the moment. So their belief system surrounding some aspects of sexuality, etc., is going to look different to mine. And I don't necessarily want to shame them for that. I want to encourage them to find a way that's free of fear, guilt, and shame. And like the beginning of your journey as well, as far as I remember, it was really difficult. And the only path that looked like it was available was this Tantra, Neo-Tantra path. And that's its own belief system as well. And so for a lot of people, that would be really uncomfortable. And with a lot of the Neo-Tantra world, there's a heavy, heavy focus on the sexualization of everything. Now, I've got nothing wrong with things feeling pleasurable and wonderful and people positively exploring their sexuality. That's wonderful. It's a great doorway. But sometimes it feels like a bit of a bait and switch.
Yes.
You're walking into a circle where you feel that everybody is spiritual and understands everything, and you realize they really don't, because there's often not a lot of intimate relationships that work within those circles. And when it comes to engaging new relationships, etc., they're not necessarily doing the work on their own relationships. Sometimes this is not a blanket statement, this has been my experience. So I wanted to do things away from allocating one way of doing things. And it's really hard to do because it's a very creative approach, and the world doesn't encourage that. It tells us that this is the way you do this thing, and this is the right way, and this is the wrong way. And it's always sitting in polarity. It's never about balancing something out for yourself in your own life.
And I think that's the most important part of this work. And going back to those two key words, that trust and confidence in ourselves. Because I have slightly similar examples of my past of, when I first entered the Tantra world, or that spiritual world. And again, it's not putting down the philosophy that I was studying and actually really loving in that sense. It comes down to how human beings grasp that work and go, this is how it should be. And I'm not one of those people in life going, nothing should be anything unless it's how comfortable we are, and learning to go one step at a time with everything and not put our full trust in sex. So, in some Tantra circles or spiritual circles, we have such blind faith in the people, for instance, that it can be very, very dangerous. And it gives the beauty of the depth of that spiritual work such a bad name. And so again, if we go back to ourselves first, one step at a time, how comfortable we are, because we don't have to do anything in life that we are not comfortable with. If there is a safe space to explore that, then that's the beauty of this work. And Because again, we have a choice. We have a choice based on our religious beliefs. We have a choice based on what our bodies are comfortable with, where you know, where's enough for us to go that is pleasurable for us, whether that's
Yeah.
open sexually, sensually, or psychologically, to something that we go, yeah, that makes sense to me, and that's a beautiful philosophy to infiltrate into my life. But that's the beauty of what I feel, that when I found you, it was, you've got such a full, well-rounded belief of this world, in terms of the tantra world, neo-tantra world, and how it's okay to go one step at a time with your own comfortability. And that
Yeah.
for me is that's a safe space to know I can go into. And therefore
Well,
it's
there's a lot of that at the moment with the trauma informed work, etc. And I always say that if somebody's having triggered flashbacks, or has no clear timeline of something that's happened to them, especially in the sort of sexual abuse and trauma lines, they must be referred to a mental health professional, because we have a scope of practice, and each of us have an individual scope of practice. I mean, I obviously love it when you blow smoke and tell me how wonderful I am, because I think I've always wanted to be this spiritual person. And I suppose part of my journey has been realizing that the way I want to approach this is finding the guru in you. And instead of, and when people come in, that's the other thing about authority in the neo-tantra world, is that when I first started walking into those circles, there were a lot of people with a lot of authority because they'd done it for a long time, and they understood things that I apparently didn't understand. And a lot of the time I felt less than, and that I was always trying to play catch up, that I wasn't enough. I wasn't enough sexually to be involved in the really out there neo-tantra worlds. Although I was fascinated and interested, there were parts of me that I think my own personal belief systems and allowances wouldn't let me go there, in the sense that it's not just pushing the edges, it would re-traumatize me. It would actually re-traumatize me. And so finding those edges for everyone is individual, which is why it's so difficult sometimes to hear about people who push those edges, who talk about following the energy. Following the energy, I believe, is a fantastic thing to do, but you don't follow the energy to the exclusion of someone else's preferences and boundaries.
no. And that's
the safer someone feels, the deeper they can go.
Yeah, this is the thing. It's if we lose that safety and our grounding in that way, nothing is going to be, the energy is not going to be moving around as it,
No.
as beautifully as it can do. And so to find that, your own, again, boundaries. I mean, this has been even another step of a journey, even in this last year for me, is my own boundary setting, my own trust in saying, no, that's okay if I don't want to enter into that way of thinking or feeling, but what can I do? What opens up my own creativity, sexuality? And that's what's, again, I keep coming back to the word, I guess, but it's that trust building within yourself, of how far you want to go, and therefore how intuitively you trust other people as well. And so therefore you're creating and infiltrating and bounding your own safety for what that means.
Yeah.
And therefore I do believe it's part of your own therapy, in a way, of
Yes.
how can I rewrite those stories of my past, of what I wasn't so aware of, and how I potentially allowed someone else to dictate what things should be, rather than me saying, no, that's not my choice right now. However, I'd be really interested to try it this way, because again, to me, it's always been so fascinating. And I always believe it's, certain humans in the world, we're all human, and
Yeah.
people, excuse my language, fuck it up for you potentially.
but they do, and it's, I think it's also because of the way that the world is currently structured. We're not invited or encouraged to find our own ways forward. And I believe that within humanity, there's always going to be a certain percentage of people who are going to be predators and are going to be looking for the easy way and are willing to take with no boundaries. And then there's going to be a certain amount of people who are such givers that they always get used and abused to a large extent, and the rest of us fall somewhere in the middle. And being aware of predation without letting it block your own personal journey, I think, is very important. So it's important to me as well that as you go through the course, for example, there might be some things you're not comfortable doing, or you don't have a partner, or so you don't want to learn it in that way. It's giving people different options and saying, if that's not comfortable for you, what about this? What about this? And so there's ways to create an individual picture for everyone, or an individual song for everyone.
Yeah.
But it involves a lot of letting go of what you think it should look like. So
Yeah.
especially for me at the moment with doing business courses and looking to market, etc., there's a lot of stuff out there that I just don't feel comfortable with. And then I'm thinking, but you also need to eat. You
Yes.
also need to have clients and put your work in front of people. And this work is quite difficult to put in front of people sometimes. Like, for example, on Facebook, I can't advertise on Facebook because the word intimacy coaching is not allowed.
Yeah.
And that's going back to the intimacy coordination on film sets, and that's one thing that has done for a lot of the industry that's underneath the umbrella. And by the way, I don't think that my way of doing it is the only way or the right way. I think it's a way that works for many people, but there are lots of great people out there doing work in other fields doing it differently. I mean, I'm 51, so am I going to relate to somebody in the dating scene who's 20 something? No. But can there be a coach that has learned the techniques and the skills who can apply themselves to that situation? Yes.
Exactly that. And it's this really interesting when you talk about the different ages we are and the age groups that we work with, and we all have our own, let's use the word niche in that way, dependent on our past or our experiences now and what we've learned over the years. Because I'm working, as you know, I'm working with lots of, even from the mental health aspect, I'm working with lots of students, and they're theatre students. So you and I know that background and what goes.
Yeah.
So there's lots of work around anxiety and that. But I have been infiltrating the intimacy work because of, obviously, with the theatre, that umbrella with the theatre at the moment, it's really interesting. So I can be doing these mini sessions with them, which I've been testing out for myself as well as a coach, to go, right, how can I be learning to pass this work on? And so, but having brought in, obviously, the scope of practice that we have, very, very gently and very, and I've been, again, learning the expectations and the boundaries surrounding that. So bringing in some basic things like the breath work, like the even some of the meditative ideas, and it's gone down so incredibly with that age group. So I'm talking like 17 to 25.
Yeah.
What has been fascinating, and I know I've been so excited when I've told you this, even in a text, when I've had some couples, as there was around about 20 years old, there's two couples that suddenly went, can we come to you about our relationship? And one of my friends said to me, going, oh, well, isn't that a bit silly? They're not going to be together for much longer, probably. And what I said to them was, well, actually, regardless of whether they end up, I know, yeah, that was their take on their own life and how their life worked out. But what they've failed to realize, I said, it doesn't matter if people are going to be together. What they're learning now at that age, and to implement that level of trust, respect, and again, the inner work for themselves at that age. And they're so open to it, more so than I expected it to be, because you say the word sex, when I was, that age, it was like, oh, we can't talk about that. And they're so much more open and developed, I think, in that way, because of the way the world is changing. And so my job, I think, and my responsibility, and I'm 43, so I was like, okay, I'm kind of, I'm obviously good 20 years older than them. However, I want to still relate to that mindset. So it's almost, I have to be the beacon of responsibility, and for them someone to look up to, however, opening up this conversation in a safe environment with responsibility and, again, trust and respect. So it's been incredible to take this work and see how you can develop it for different types of people and ages.
because intimacy isn't just sexual. And for me, to be intimate, I'm intimate with my friends in the sense that I'm not sexual with my friends, but I'm intimate with my friends in the fact that I'm vulnerable with my friends, and I'm sharing things that are deep and from a place that's very, very raw inside myself.
Yeah.
And that, having somebody to guide you through how to integrate that is really important. And the youngsters are different. And, I was talking to a group of people my own age the other day and saying we actually need to start learning from our children because the world has changed so much. If I think of my husband's grandmother, who's turning 95 in a week's time, she has seen world wars. She has seen, like, she was in the tail end of one plague and went into another plague.
Yeah.
So her lifetime has seen almost everything, and she's always open to learning. And she listens to, she knows what I do, and she's quite fascinated. So she listens to radio programs about sexuality, etc. And they're always talking about the parts of sexuality that we all find interesting and fascinating, and gender identification, and gay and straight people, and all of this sort of sexual education material that's out there. And she's always asking me questions about it, and a lot of the time I can't answer really, because that's not really my work. My work is on intimacy. So even though there's a strong emphasis on sensuality and somatic experiencing and all of those sorts of things within that work, she's fascinated and interested. And my son, when he tells me things now, I have to block off that part of myself that treated him when he was 9 years old as I know better, because now a lot of things he knows better. He's so much more comfortable talking about things, and even sexuality. He, back in the day, his friends would approach my company for help when they were of age to learn about pleasure and stuff. And I was very excited about that, because I thought there are people my age who are never going to learn about pleasure in that way, and bliss states and flow, and how that integrates and infiltrates every area of your life. Yeah. When you are happy sensually and intimately with yourself or with a partner, the energy that gives you, colors are brighter, things taste different, chemicals released in your body are different. Yes. And we're not doing that. We're all taking ourselves to health and wellness by doing gym, by eating right, by going to yoga, by, but when there's that step too far for most people. And yeah. I'm wondering if the younger generation is going to get that right, in the sense that they're going to step into sensuality and sexuality with more of a curiosity and an embrace of this part of the human experience, instead of, oh, that's taboo, it has to be done only under these circumstances with these people, etc., which it can be. You can set up your boundaries wherever you like them. The only concern I have about that, though, is that it tends to be extreme experiences that are put upon the younger generation from a very early age. I mean, the average age of exposure to pornography is around about 11 at the moment, because of smartphones, and you're not equipped emotionally, I think, you're curious. I mean, we're all curious about the human body. If somebody's naked, we tend to struggle to not have a look, or we stare directly into their eyes like, I'm not looking anywhere else.
I think it's
just a body.
Yeah, and this is it. I think that, as you're saying, the dangers surrounding obviously the younger generations, that we haven't formed our own boundaries at that point, because again, potentially, depending on someone's past or with their formative years, potentially majority of time, hopefully, there hasn't been any sexual trauma at this point. So
yes,
the curiosity, which is so natural in human nature and beautiful, is that we haven't come across those, those situations that can therefore then transform into being very traumatic. So the curiosity is, is such a wonderful, wonderful thing. However, without that safety aspect, or someone responsible, sharing these ideas, to teach someone else how to be their own responsibility and take their own responsibility and build that trust in themselves. So yes, it's a minefield, isn't it? And especially again,
it's such a double-edged sword with pornography generally, because to each his own. I don't necessarily have an issue with a lot of pornography, unless obviously it's really abusive and extreme. And unfortunately, a lot of ways to get people to click on something or to follow it through is to go with extreme experiences. And because of the dopamine kick we get from contractive orgasm, and there are many different sorts of orgasms, contractive orgasm is one form of bliss state in the body. But because of the dopamine associated with that sort of contractive state, it can become quite addictive. And people need bigger and bigger experiences. Instead of going sideways into pleasure and into integrating experiences and balancing things out with oxytocin and serotonin, and they're just going for the dopamine kick and the adrenaline kick. And a lot of that is found in extreme things, and extreme pornography is part of that. And it gives a message to people watching it that this is what sex looks like, and this is what intimacy and sensuality look like, and this is what people enjoy, because it's not real. That pleasure, real pleasure is actually quite boring to somebody observing it. Yes. Because when you're in this, I mean, like, I've had a 2-hour orgasm. I'm sure it was really boring to watch. Well, maybe my husband didn't but being in that state and like leaving my body, and all of those things are not visual. No. They're not fast and visual, and they're not going to elicit quick reactions from an observer necessarily. And it's that beautiful space of I almost call it fun and pleasure and play, that a lot of people don't get to explore because they don't know it's there. Like, sex is also very serious. Yeah. When we're having sex, it's very serious because there has to be a trail of clothes to the floor, and we have to kiss at a certain angle, and everything is beautiful. No one ever farts, and no one's tummy makes any noises, and and it's all, when the hairs and your makeup's perfect when you wake up in the morning. And I do understand that, because when I come in to do a shoot or a video or something, I've got a face on. Normally I'll be running around in my sweatpants and my hair will look like Medusa.
Oh, me too. This is a Tuesday morning.
Yeah. You're going to put a face on and look acceptable to the world. Yeah. But that's that thing in being in a 28-year relationship as well with my husband, is that I am constantly surprised by how much deeper we can go. Because I keep thinking, oh, that's it now. I've had the experiences. I've gone as deep into intimacy, and I'm teaching other people. I know everything, And then I have an experience with him and I think, oh, I don't know everything. And that's the thing with coaching as well, is that often I think coaches feel like they have to know it all. So if they're going into a new relationship, or I've had this with some of the other intimacy coaches as well, they go into a new relationship and they're like, oh, I'm finding myself feeling shy now. And I'm an intimacy coach, and now my partner's saying to me, but you're the intimacy coach, you're supposed to know everything. But every relationship is so individual that that's just not true. And even in a 28-year relationship, you don't know everything.
And this is the beauty of it, I think. And this is the realization. I'm having one now, as you know, like, I've got a new relationship of 8 months, and again, starting the work with you, I didn't have a partner, and so it was very much. So I guess that's why I spent so much time, and now I'm so glad I did, with the the breath work and having ideas, and again working with and on myself as well, which was good for me at the time. That was very...
And designing your relationship, you also designed it instead of falling into it.
Exactly. And those conversations were something I'd never really had with myself, let alone say out loud and be able to share that. And I know that's okay, that I'm almost designing this. But going into something new, for me, the lesson here very much is in my past, because I have had a certain amount, number of partners at my age, because I didn't fall into a long-term relationship from a young age, that I had those dopamine hits, I had those oxytocin hits, and I guess that I used to relate that to, I'm changing a partner, or that's not long lasting, because relationships just fizzle out. I'm more interested, maybe it's an age thing as well, or an experience, or maturity thing, I don't know, but it's more, how can we keep this going, and what new things can I learn? That's what fascinates me now. And how much deeper can we go? With no rush, with no expectation either, but just in the beauty of sharing, and that part of intimacy to me is is the most incredible, because it's also humorous. It's fun.
Yes.
It's like, oh my God, that person will know me even more in a year's time, because I'm
Yeah.
opening up and feel that safety and grounding. And starting it with that, again, the relationship design, my goodness, like that was so incredible for me, even to go, oh, I'm allowed to not want that type of, or I'm allowed to go,
Yeah.
I that's what I need and want and have been craving in my life or missing. So what do I want instead? And really inviting that in energetically as well, which is where
Mm,
the
mm,
understanding of the work comes so beautifully into play when you understand your own energy and
yeah.
what your body and mind therefore is wanting so much more of. So it's yeah, the basics are,
It's amazing though with coaching. I've spoken to so many coaches
yeah,
who want to add intimacy coaching in because they work with clients and they get to a certain stage and then they go, okay, now I'm stuck because they're asking me about their orgasm. They're
yeah,
saying, why can't I orgasm? And they're just sitting there going, well, I don't know, go to a sex therapist. And even if you go to a counselor, without pragmatic and practical tools, you're not going to find more pleasure in your body. So there has to be a practical element of the teaching that is comfortable for the individual, as well as finding that safe space to be able to share and become vulnerable. I always say to people, please don't trust me, in the sense that I must earn your trust. And I believe that that's true in relationship and in life as well. I look for red flags and stuff because I've had some experiences with some people who've been takers and had trays in their lives that have definitely not been conducive to a balanced relationship, whether that's friendship or whether that's romantic. And, I always say to people, don't trust your teacher even. You must know how to say no to your teacher, even if you like them. I don't really want people to say no to me because obviously that feels like rejection. But when a coach or a person can say, you know what, I don't know if I'm comfortable with that, or you give them a couple of options and they can say, and I've learned that by trial and error. I mean, when I started doing this work and working with this work, I was working mainly in the neo tantra field, and I was hell bent on teaching everything to everyone all the time because I was like, this has changed my life. I was a total evangelist.
yeah,
That's in my nature and in my character as well, is to evangelize about things that I find wonderful. So, I've got to share it with everybody. And that's not everybody's nature. And so it's lovely to be able to share with people to the level that they feel comfortable. I always talk about going at the pace of the most fearful. So when people come to you for help, they're often also shit scared
yeah,
because they're like, what is this going to mean for my relationship? Am I going to now have to be in an open relationship because I'm getting involved in Tantra? And the answer to that is no. You can have conscious monogamy just as you can have conscious partnering with as many people as you've got the time and energy for. In my life, I can't even think about having another relationship, the amount of time and energy that would consume, because my energy and my time are in my intimate relationship with my husband, but they're also in so many other aspects of creativity and things I want to do. So for me personally, that might not be the way forward, but it might be the way forward for some people and then not for others who think that if you go on a journey into in finding your intimate self or into sexuality, you're going to turn into a mad swinger, swinging from chandeliers every evening. I mean, wonderful for you if you get to go through that honeymoon phase.
and again,
Just kidding.
I know, but you're right. And again, it's about what people want based on that safety of what they trust and know.
Yeah.
And
And
again,
sometimes the excitement of what they want to explore, but by the same token, they're like bouncing between, I think I want to have an orgy, and then, oh my Lord, no, I don't want anyone else touching my partner.
yeah,
So there's
and
all
what's the
these things
aftermath of that?
involved.
Yeah,
Yes, exactly. And that's why I actually enjoyed sometimes teaching with my husband as well, because you don't want people to. It used to happen to me a lot when I was singing, not so much when I've done the intimacy coaching. I think that's because I'm very clear with people that I'm not going to get involved in their relationships. They're coming to me for help. So that's not going to be happening. I'm not going to be having sex with people. That's not what we do. But when I used to sing, sometimes in the front row, you'd find some people to pick on. and I can't even see them because the spotlight's in my face, but I could see sometimes people grabbing their partners and holding them tighter, thinking, why is she coming near my husband? And it's like, I don't want him. I promise. This is just part of the show. And with the intimacy coaching, it's not that that I don't find people attractive necessarily, or normally if I find people attractive, I don't work with them. It's I've got some personal boundaries about that stuff. I know about transference and counter transfers, but working with people, they've got to trust you. And so sometimes what I do is I'll separate people out and talk to them individually and saying what is right for you, and then go at the pace of the most fearful. Because if you can help somebody feel safe and vulnerable in your space, they can go much further on their own personal journey. That's the thing, though. We're taught when we go to an authority, we must do what they tell us. And I think in the intimacy coaching and sort of conscious sexual arena, that can be incredibly dangerous.
Yeah.
I think the first thing you need to do if you go to see someone or help someone is find out where their boundaries are and find out what your boundaries are.
Yeah, absolutely. And it's got to be the starting point. There's got to be that foundation there of taking it one step at a time, and learning to trust your own boundaries with the open communication. I mean, again, effective communication is everything, and you talk about that on the course as well, and that's the fundamental thing, whether that's non-verbal communication or verbal communication. And it's I mean, I think that's the foundation to life, really, is how we're going to what our wants and what our needs are, and again have that understanding back, so therefore we're understanding each other more, and more frequently, building that trust. And it's such an integral part of any intimacy, and how then we can have those communication with ourselves, and really honest conversations that are really difficult at times. However, they're going to become easier over the time once we're opening up, and that's what the beauty of it is, and it comes down to that level of trust.
I'm going to circle back to the first question I asked, believe it or not, like 40 minutes later, and just say again that the time periods of things as well, because often people will say to me, I want to do a course and this is what I want to fix, or this is what I want to learn, or whatever, and this is the amount of time I've got. And I don't want to give anyone the impression that these things are quick, because it's so deep and so vulnerable if you're going to do it properly, that it takes a while. I mean, if you think about changing your body, I mean, it takes months to see results from gymming or different nutrition, or whatever you're doing. It takes months to see these results. We don't just overnight go on a retreat or do a course and then suddenly everything's different, although that's what we're told happens, because we watch movies where that is the narrative. We see the best curated versions of everybody on Instagram and Facebook, etc. And I mean, I'm guilty of that too. I mean, I don't want to put my messy self, I'll put that in front of the people I'm working with, or, because being vulnerable is part of the process. But I don't necessarily want all that stuff on YouTube, when I've been a monster, like after my hysterectomy, when I lost my personality and my sense of I don't really want that out there for people to observe. But we also, in a sense, this is why I wanted to start doing these talks, was just to talk about stream of consciousness stuff surrounding what we're doing and learning, so that other people can realize they're not alone.
Yeah. And this is,
and these things take time, and it's a good idea to find someone that you can do this work with if it interests you, and if it's something you want to do, if you want to heal, if you want to explore, you want to evolve yourself in these ways, to find someone who you really resonate with. And as I've said for a while, take what resonates and discard the rest. But you've got to create that trust. And you thought you could do it in 6 months. And I say to everybody, it's 6 months at the earliest. No one's done it in 6 months yet. I've got a hope for one American coach that is really motoring through the work. She might make it in 6 months, but to 18 months, 2 years, 3 years,
This is what the beauty of it is. I mean, whether it's because other things kind of come in, or whether it be work, or we've got to all make money, so our focus goes elsewhere. For me, this is now I'm seeing it this way, and intuitively probably thought this at the time, but knowing this is forever work, like you're saying,
Yeah. Oh, I love that. Yeah.
work, and consciously, because it's funny, like you say, when we either watch a movie within an hour and a half and we see someone's transition over whatever, however, as you said, however they curate it, or we go on a week or 2 week retreat and go, oh, I'm healed, or I've learned all this stuff. But unless you consciously focus and infiltrate this work on a daily, weekly basis, like anything in our life, habits aren't going to form, and our mindset is not going to change unless we're doing this as conscious work. So this for me is something going right. I mean, it's every day of my life there is something within this course, for instance, or even other modalities that we bring in, or something that it's our go toward. I mean, I don't think I could do a day without yoga. That's just a personal thing for me. Other people wouldn't, have found something else that grounds them or stabilizes them.
People who do running, I don't get it.
See,
I know there's endorphins. I'm like, don't get it.
Again, not for me. Thank you very much. But that, again,
I love yoga, I love dance, but if you run I can admire you, I can respect you, I can support you, but for me, nah, it's not my path.
And that's the beautiful thing about how different we all are, and know what our needs are and how we can fulfill them. And so yes, this is, like, again, for me, forever work, and it's something that I'm wanting to carry on over my next however long I've got in this world, and to share that at different times with different people, because that becomes relevant to that person. And as we know, as a coach, it's not about us, it's about the person, and us listening to their wants, their needs, where they are, and again guiding them to the best of our knowledge, with that open communication of what might work and what might help. And I mean, that's the beauty of passing these types of things on. But we as coaches or leaders, whatever people want to call themselves, that's the level of understanding we have to have, a more full-rounded knowledge. So for me, that's a habit formed. It's not just something reading in a book and have this work as an integral part of our lives. And will I live by every part of everything on this course or other modalities? No, because I've gone, but I want to have a level of understanding for, or how I can see that fitting into someone else's life, and again, respecting that and admiring that. But I've got to know what is, part of myself and my scope of personal practice, or be able to to pass this on to others. And that's what the beautiful thing is about learning anything. Like you said, in the evangelistic sense, I'm very much just got to tell you, because this is incredible. Do this.
But all coaches go through that, I think, especially life coaches and business coaches. They want to get out there and go, this worked for me. Please let me share it with you.
And to have that excitement. If we didn't have that excitement about something, I guess you could question whether you actually, it's something that resonates with you or not. But to know that. But I think also the learning of changing your language, of how you're bringing this across, dependent on someone else's walls and boundaries and stigmas attached to it. So it's very naturally bringing it into the wider audience, potentially, by having these different types of by having these conversations about it, like the truth of what's behind it, and the level of trust that can be there, and the level of safety that can be there, and the level of excitement, not just pleasurably sexually, in the level of excitement. Oh my goodness, this, I mean, even in meditation, or whether it's it's mind-blowing of how you
it is.
And
tapping into that energy is, you can't describe it though. People have to experience it, which is why, in the beginning, a lot of people look at, I've had coaches who've gone through the whole course and then gone back and gone, okay, I get it now. Some of the things I did in the beginning, I did them because they were part of the course, and I'm giving it a try to see how it reacts with me, and I got some benefit. And as I got to the end, I went, oh, and they circled back, because that's what happens with things that really can be integrated into your life. And look, Suzy, the good news is the course shouldn't take you more than 4 years.
Well,
That's the
I'm on a
longest it's
path now.
taken so far. And it's all paid for already, so you're all good, unless I die.
It just gets more and more fascinating. And I think, I mean, this has been spurred on again because I am in a relationship where I feel, you know, I've got a partner. I can go, can we try this? And it's become
yes.
It's that I am sharing with someone else, which again is massively pleasurable, you know, for me in terms of my own personal life. But also I'm seeing the response more immediately, so I'm going, okay, great, and I can write that out and go, I've done that. And you know, so I've got my kind of my journey of and I've got more time now from last year where, you know, again, different things come in, don't they, where you get pulled off here. But it's fascinating. But also the very beginning of a relationship, of course, I was gently input, like I was doing blossoming
I need to
without
do some
him knowing.
homework. Were you willing to be a guinea pig?
Yes, I know. But I didn't. At first, I was a bit shy to, again, learning things about ourselves.
Yeah.
And, why am I shy to bring this up? I'll just do this to myself. And I was like, so I was doing all the blossoming without going, oh, by the way, I'm doing this
Yeah.
technique. Like 4 or
But you
5
still get the benefit, even if you're not necessarily sharing that. It can be an individual technique.
And I was writing my notes going, oh, I tried this the other night, but he didn't know yet. But
Yeah.
like 4 or 5 months in where I was like, well, actually, this, can I please now share this with you? Because this can be mutually
Yeah.
beneficial. And this is what I have been practicing. Thank you very much. You know,
Oh, that's lovely. I love hearing these stories, you know, of how it all fits together. Because I've been going through a major shift at the moment as well into not necessarily moving away from intimacy coaching as a title, because I do love the word intimacy because it covers so many things that conscious sexuality requires. But I'm moving almost into using a holistic, full body, full mind, full spirit approach. And that looks different for each person. Because the one thing that I've always been looking for my whole life was the one true path, the one right path. And what I've eventually started realizing for myself, and it doesn't have to be everyone's realization, this is just what works for me, is that there are so many of us. We have different bodies, different psyches, different experiences, different traumas, different integrations, that I can design my own way forward. I can trust my inner self and I can heal myself. And the people I work with are conduits for my own healing. And that's what I want to be as an intimacy coach for people as well, is to be a conduit, not to be an authority. So it's not a hierarchy. It's a way of, this learning comes through me to you. Some of it is downloaded. It's sort of intuitive, and a lot of it is scientific. And there's, again, that beautiful balance. It doesn't have to be science or esoteric intuition. It can be a balance, but you're helping someone else do it for themselves.
yeah, the beauty.
I mean, I don't like the word empower because everybody uses it, but that is the best word in English. And maybe I need to find the word in Greek or Latin or something. Helping someone help themselves, you know. And it's the same with coaches as well. I speak to a lot of coaches and they often say to me, you know, I'm teaching this work, but I'm going through my own tough time at the moment. So I think that's why it's important to have people that we can also relate to and talk to, and realize that no one has got it under control all of the time.
Well,
You know, it really is an individual journey.
Anyone that pretended to be perfect and know it all, I don't think I would trust immediately anyway. It's that, it's that self-effacing nature of a teacher, to me, is the experiences, and is the and it's interesting what you said earlier about the, you know, I tend not to say, if I'm going through an awful time, I tend not to put it out there immediately. I love to talk about it afterwards to any help. But I'll always, you know, I'll always be bringing those things up, because that's the experience that allows us to go deeper into this work and go deeper into the healing journey or whatever it is, and to appreciate the power of it in our own time and in our own way. And unless we've had those experiences, like the majority of therapists have to go through therapy, coaches, we go through being coached to understand that language and how that feels. because unless we've had those experiences, then I kind of go, well, how can we be any authority or any knowledge for someone else? However, yes, opening it up to being that guide for someone to go through their own journey is the beauty of the coaching language, and the way that we communicate that.
Well, that was the whole world in 1 hour, and we've actually even gone over time. So we certainly didn't struggle for things to talk about. I know we went on many tangents, and each of those tangents could be an individual call. And I don't know if anyone's ever going to be listening to all of this, but if they are, I hope that us sharing and just chatting to each other is helpful and helps people understand things. And I just thank you so much for joining me, because this is what I wanted to do. I didn't want to do getting I don't know, press kits from people and looking to advertise them. And I thought the way to invite people in is to invite people in. It's just to say, these are the things we do. These are the things we talk about. You can ask us any questions and just get to know us sort of as people, just chatting. So thank you so much. It's been fun. I've enjoyed myself. I was nervous this morning. I was thinking, I've got to put a face on, I've got to do filming, and there's always this sense of, we have to all be professional and hoity-toity. You see, I've also got shit that I have to work through.
I think this is what we learn each stage of the way, and it's nothing. The beauty of, again, the group that you have, and that I feel very much a part of. Even everyone goes off here and there, does their own, and everyone comes back together. And I said this from the very beginning, and this isn't me blowing smoke up your ass again, but
please do.
I will. But it is the truth of it is that you form human connections when there's something that fits right for you and resonates with you, and those are the right people. And to invite that in to see it as it truly is, rather than having these expectations of the world that we're in terms of the intimacy, that it's anything less or more so than our natural selves, like coming together and relating to the people that we relate to, and the human connection side, Annie. I mean, yes, the marketing, yes, we've got to, it's business and all of this, but the truth is, the right people, we find our tribe, don't we? And I think that is the beauty of the human connections that we have in the world, are hopefully the right ones that we will connect with. So it's such great ideas to do this, because it is normal, it's natural, and we've all got our own shit going on, and we're learning each day. And I think that's what we, it opens up someone else's vulnerability to want to learn and go deeper themselves. So
well, thank you very much for joining me today. I'm going to end this call and go and do some shopping. Real life calls, life beckons.
Oh, look at your background as well. I'm like, oh, it's gorgeous.
Oh, I love living in the jungle. I have to do a call on that as well.
Thank you so much. I've loved this, Annie. Thank you.
Yeah, I've loved it too. Thanks so much for joining me. And so I'm saying bye to the people on YouTube. Bye bye.